Welcome to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, the daily talk show with the voice of Penn State football and men's basketball. You never know what special guest may stop on by any given day. Now here's the man of the hour, Mr. Steve Jones.
Welcome. Great to have you with us. And Kyle's here.
I am here.
SMU is an incredible contradiction in so many ways.
Let's hear.
Very talented. No question. Athletes. Daniels.
Jennings.
Smith. Jennings. Big up front in defense. Like, wow. Move the ball. I already mentioned the -11 giveaway takeaway on the road, which is just like bizarre.
Ooh.
Oh, you didn't hear about that one? They're even on the season giveaway takeaway. The +11 at home, -11 on the road.
A bit of a worrying sign.
No, I'm just saying. It's just like it doesn't mean.
But like
But it's happened.
Could.
How about it's happened? Here's the other part that is bizarre beyond words.
Let's hear.
They have fumbled the ball 23 times this year. Now, they haven't lost all of them.
So they've fumbled it twice a game, give or take?
Yes.
Wow.
I mean, it's been like, it's stunning.
And what is Penn State's, like, how many fumbles? Under 10, I think?
Yeah, I think Penn State has fewer than 10. That's why when Penn State fumbles, you're like, what? Like when Singleton did that against
First
Maryland,
play of the
you're
game.
like, what? Right? But I looked at that one. What?
It sounds almost impossible. Like, that would be a number I'd be surprised if even a Purdue had. Like, that's ridiculous.
I kind of looked at that one. Okay. I mean, I went and double-checked it this morning just to make sure, because I knew that. I said, well, I kind of fumbled a little bit, whatever. I'm going, oh, my God. I've never seen that. Now, if they play a clean game, they play a clean game. I mean, which will be huge for them. They also get a lot of penalties. They average 8 penalties a game.
It's a lot. That was where Penn State was earlier this season, just penalty.
And Penn State's been able to back way off that, which really helps. But that is, you need to be disciplined in a game like this. You need to be disciplined in any game, period. Which means you've got to be able to stay away from chippiness. I mean, you need to. You need to stay away from chippiness. Because no offense, this has the reputation of being, quote, a yappy group. It's kind of like our staff meeting.
Jeez.
I have an idea. No, that's okay. Don't talk. What?
Nothing. Continue.
Tell me I'm wrong.
No comment.
How often do I participate in the staff meeting?
Well, staff meeting.
That's exactly right. I try to get out of there as fast as I can. Okay? So you've got to stay away from, quote, getting into it with them. You have to stay away from penalties. Penalties hurt them against Oregon. Okay? I mean, 2 of them happen. I got that. Okay, that part I get.
But
okay, I'm talking about the face ones. Okay, and that part of that's being maybe a little out of position or whatever. You asked about fumbles. Penn State's fumbled it 11 times this year, lost 4. Okay, they fumbled it 23 times.
Double.
Like, yikes.
And so
now the other part too is about the rushing part. Their rush defense statistically has been outstanding. Okay.
But have they faced a rushing attack
Only
like what Penn State has?
3 of the teams they faced this year were ranked in the top 60 of rushing attacks this
There's
season.
the answer.
Only 3. And in each one, those are the 3 highest productive games against them this year.
So it's a deceiving stat.
Well, I'm just saying, we're going to find out because, again, you're talking about two teams that have not played against each other. So, the matchups are so important. I mean, you talk about the first quarter is always important because you think you're going to do well with a matchup, and all of a sudden you're not doing well with a matchup. Or, I'm not sure how we're going to hang out with this matchup, and all of a sudden you realize, hey, we're winning it. Right? And now, hey, we can kind of change up a little bit here now because we're winning that matchup, and we weren't quite sure going into the game.
If Penn State sees a guy like Katron Allen getting a favorable matchup, especially when he spurts out, or Amari Evans, or Trey Wallace, or if it's, let's say, Luke Reynolds, someone coming in, and they have a matchup you didn't expect.
They play a fair amount of cover 3. Okay, now what does cover 3 want you to do? They want you to throw deep against cover 3. It's trying to lure you into going deep. If you're smart, right, you can maybe take a shot here and there because you've set it up through other plays. But guess what? I mean, you can be smart about it. I thought Clemson was smart with how they played against it in the ACC championship game. Now, they had shorter field in a couple of things. But for the most part, I thought they played it right. And I mean, credit where credit's due to how they did it, and they won the game 34-31. I mean, look, they got the game 24-7. SMU showed its heart and guts
to fight back
and talent by the way they came back in this game. I understand completely why Rhett Lashley went for 1 when he tied the game up at 31 because the way they were playing, I'd have taken my shot in overtime too.
You went pretty much unanswered in the second half. Yeah, take your shot at them.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. I mean, you kind of looked at him and went, okay. We're playing great. We've got them on the heels. I'll take my shot in overtime against these guys because right now we've got them guessing, right? And not as confident as they were in the first 3 quarters. So that fourth quarter where SMU played so well is something where you look at and go, yep, that tells you who they are. Because Clemson is the best team they played this year.
Yeah.
I mean, Clemson is the best team they played this year. And at least in my opinion, they are. I mean, Louisville's pretty good.
Yeah.
Louisville's good too.
I mean, Clemson's in the playoff. That's pretty much the end of the discussion.
Right.
For me.
They're the best. And that they played to this stage.
Yeah.
And the game was in Charlotte on top of it. But that, again, Jennings moves around. You've got to be able to, and he's not, look, and when he breaks contained, he's not always looking to run.
Yeah. He's looking to get somebody to move.
He kind of keeps his head up, so very much Trace McSorley-like. Keeps his head up looking to make a play. All right, it's not there, I'm going. Right? And he's a really skilled runner. And the story about him as to how he got there, and this happens a lot. This is the college version of Patrick Mahomes. I was talking with Brett Veach, the general manager of the Chiefs, who, by the way, speaks very highly of you.
Yes.
I mentioned Jason's name, and it's like there was just dead silence for about 15 seconds, which is usually what we get anyway. And he had gone down to Texas Tech, and they were looking at some players. They were just scouting. Because, scouts come in all the time to Penn State. And they looked at a couple Texas Tech players, and he said, God, we need to take a long look at Mahomes, the quarterback. And he went back and he told Andy, and he said, Andy Reid, goes back and tells Andy Reid, he says, I want to talk to you about something. And he says, I went down to Texas Tech. I'm looking at other people, and the quarterback just kept boomed in my face the whole time. I said I couldn't take my eyes off him. And he said because and Brett told him because they play in the Big 12, he could go to road games and could see Mahomes play because it was an easy drive from Kansas City to get to Manhattan, to get to Lawrence, to get to Ames, Iowa, whatever, because of the proximity. Well, the same thing happened with Jennings. Lashley comes in from the Miami staff. Okay. So, look, they're trying do everything they can to get guys at this point. And they went to, I want to say, is it Oak Ridge High School? Is it Oak Ridge or Oak Park that Jennings went to?
Jennings went to South Oak Cliff.
South Oak Cliff. So he goes to South Oak Cliff, and they're looking at guys.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, I guess he says, like midway through the second quarter to his guy, says, guys, we need to take a look at the quarterback. He had accepted an offer to go to Missouri State.
Mm-hmm.
He ends up at SMU, and
not bad.
See what he's done.
Not a bad jump. You mentioned the defense that SMU plays, cover 3. As someone who
not always, but they play a chunk of it.
They play a chunk of it. And so Penn State's going to, one would assume if that trend sticks, they'll face a good chunk of cover 3. How does one attack a cover 3 team? You mentioned they want you to throw deep.
Underneath.
And in my head, there are 2 players that we've seen play really well in those areas for Penn State. And tell me if I'm wrong here. Number 1, of course, is the basic one of Tyler Warren, because you can put him pretty much anywhere. He can get anywhere he wants to.
Yep.
The second would be a Julian Fleming, who we've seen make tremendous catches over the middle so often.
Everybody can do this underneath. Wallace can, Dinkins can, Evans can, Fleming can, Clifford can.
Heck, Singleton can.
Right? I mean, Singleton can. There's a lot of people that can. And the key is to get them in a space where then they can make a play after they make the catch. Right? And, and Drew throwing the ball, and he's really, as usual, he's throwing the ball really well this week.
I'm so surprised.
Yeah, I mean, it's like he threw one yesterday. I looked over at Wayne Special, and he says, he stinks. I do that all the time. Like Singleton would break off some run. I go, he stinks. Like Warren makes the catch. I go, God, why do we have that guy? Right? Yeah, you're just having good-natured fun in practice. Okay.
Of course.
And you can do all that stuff. You have to execute. You have to stay away from penalties. It's an SEC crew, by the way. We have not seen that. This is not the group, for example, that did the Auburn games. So I don't really know these guys at all. So I don't know how they're going to call it. No idea.
We don't know if they're going to be quick on the trigger when it comes to a hold. We don't know if it's going to be fast when it comes to a pass interference. We don't know.
You don't know.
These are new players for them to watch. These are new players for everyone to watch. They're going to try and pick up on tendencies.
It's completely neutral, so you don't have any idea.
Yeah.
I don't even know if there's anything you can look at that
would suffice.
The NFL puts out stats on
refs.
Like Ron Torbert's crew calls a lot of I don't know. So I'm not gonna worry about it.
No. I want to bring up a point when it comes to the college game. Yeah. So there's 2 things I actually want to bring up. One of them is my new least favorite person in college football, athletic director from Alabama, Greg Byrne, who has just been going on social media to just rant and rave, and he's like, how dare they leave Alabama out and all these things. It's like, and he's like, oh, but we were a better team all year. You lost 3 games and SMU didn't lose 3 games. That's right there. That's all we have to say. Number 1, that.
Yep.
2 is...
Can I talk about the money part? Is that what you're going to get to?
Yes.
Okay.
So he put out a statement on Twitter or on X that said, quote unquote, now is the time for action and time for Bama Nation to fight back. Although we have been competitive from an NIL standpoint, our competition has us in their sights and are actively trying to surge ahead with NIL. You have heard examples of other teams using promises of $1 million paydays to lure away our players or convince them not to come to Alabama. It is time for the Bama Nation to fight back.
Okay, so let's start with this. That tells me he thinks he's in trouble. I don't mean him personally,
but the Alabama team. They've lost 14. They've lost 14 players so far, scholarship-wise. The portal, including Jaheim Oates, the number 1 defensive player who transferred to Colorado. You had players like, I forget the name of the cornerback for them, who entered the portal for about 24 hours, then returned to Alabama. Nkwanda, I believe. You have 4 receivers, Kobe Prentice, Kendrick Law, Caleb Odom, Emmanuel Henderson Jr., backup QB Dylan Lonergan is transferring to BC, and running back Justice Haynes, who is highly regarded, is also entered the portal as well.
But a lot of the Alabama guys are going to be highly regarded.
Of course. They were in Alabama.
This tells me financially, he's looking at the landscape of the SEC. Look, he's in SEC meetings. He sees where the money's coming from. They know. Tennessee's already putting on the $10. Is it a
NIL,
surcharge?
Yeah.
It's an NIL number on their tickets, and their fans are like, we're doing it. Great. We're all happy. We'll do it. Right? So he's not looking for the whale. He's looking for the common donor. So in other words, he's looking at the Sarah McLachlan.
Yeah.
$18 a month.
He's looking at the Kyles of the world to try and grab.
I mean,
$10 from
Sarah McLachlan.
Yeah. I will remember you.
Right. As you play that song, Greg Byrne is out there telling you to send $18 a month. Right? Sure, you could give it to Tunnel for Towers and help out wounded veterans. Or you could do this. It's up to you. It's
or try and help fund bringing in a receiver from.
Or maybe you could do both.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's what he's doing because he doesn't see any other avenue. See, that tells me what he sees as his avenues. And others may fall into place and do the same thing. But that tells me that here's Alabama looking around saying, how do I compete with the Tennessees? How do I compete with the Georgias? How do I compete with Ohio State?
You know what?
Penn State, Oregon. What? Okay, because look, Alabama doesn't have Phil Knight. Nobody has Phil Knight. Nobody.
You know where I think Alabama is even more concerned, though, than just the Oregons and the LSUs and them of the world who have this money, these top schools? I think they're more concerned with the tiers below that, where backup QB Dylan Lonergan, who probably, let's say 5-10 years ago, Alabama would have kept those guys. And I mean, you had a running back, but you had a running back room, for instance, of like 5 deep players who all went to the NFL and played really well. Now those players can leave and go become stars elsewhere, make a lot of money, and then they can either stay at that school and become great, or they can transfer somewhere else afterwards and then make even more.
Okay, quarterbacks are different.
But general gist.
Quarterbacks are different. I can play 2 to 3 running backs in a game.
Yeah.
I can play 5 to 6 wide receivers in the game. Penn State plays 3 tight ends in the game. But essentially you play 1 quarterback.
But for like my example is a bad choice of player, but like the Jaheim Oates of the world, who he is incredible defensive lineman for them. Through the middle, incredible. He's great. He's like, you know what? I could stay at Alabama, or I could leave, go to Colorado, and make something happen.
Well, it's not just make something happen.
And make a lot of money, too.
Because that's one thing that Nick Saban said. And when he was here, there were a few topics we talked about. This was not one of them, okay?
Yes.
But I'm going back to when he left. He was talking about the guys came into his office and, and like they're demanding more playing time because if they don't, they're going to go someplace else and get more money. He's like, what? Which is not the way it's always been. Hey, how do I get more playing time? And he's like, okay, well, here's a list of things you need to be better at, A, B, C, and D.
Yeah.
Right? You got to remember what my saying is. I ain't starting, I'm departing.
But that is the point for me, is that if you are sitting here as Alabama, you're now not just losing players to the top schools around you, like the Alabama to Georgia or Georgia, Alabama. Stuff like that happens.
Sure.
You go to a top school because you're like, I want to play. They flip which one they're at.
Yep.
It'll happen sometimes.
Yep.
But now you're losing players to other places where guys like Kobe Prentice, a wide receiver, is going to Baylor, who usually that's a guy they'd rely on to be there as their second, third stringer, or maybe make his way up to the top of the list. Or Jaheim Oates, now going on over to Colorado, into the Big 12. Again, he's not going over to Georgia or Ohio State.
That's right.
He's going to Colorado, who, they have Deion. They are not the top echelon of school. That is the tier below that.
Yeah, but you can still win a Big 12 championship and get an automatic bid.
Yes, but still, he's going there. You have players going to even the Vanderbilts and the Syracuses of the world. All these players are going everywhere and to Kansas.
Did the weather in Syracuse change? I mean,
we play in a dome, thankfully. But the point is, these players are now transferring.
You still have to walk over there to get there.
I know, but they're transferring now to locations and schools that are not just the top 5. They are transferring to other places because they can still make a good chunk of change. And let's say they star really well at even the Syracuses of the world. The year afterwards, let's say they're a junior, all of a sudden, Penn State, Ohio State. They're like, that kid looked incredible. We want him, and we can pay more than Syracuse did.
I want to see what happens with the $22 million. Okay, which is the starting point on this. That is going to be next year, and money is going to be invested in players, and a part of the goal is roster retention. Okay. And if you can be competitive with other people on your roster retention front, because most guys don't want to leave. I mean, they kind of choose a place, they settle in. Most like their position coach, and not everybody, right? Oh, I can't believe you didn't yell at me in the recruiting process. All right, well, you weren't screwing up in the recruiting process either. But that's there's also a comfort level when you're at a place, but you're going to get pressure from home. You're going to get pressure from your agent. And this is the part about agents is interesting. So let's get into that for a second.
The agents, you mean those who are with NIL agencies, and as someone who...
How about the player agent?
Oh, the player agent. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, all of them have agents now.
Yeah.
They all have agents.
Every single one's got them.
That's why the draft thing is so interesting. Okay. So Penn State doesn't bring them in. Scouts asked to go to practice all the time. I see them all the time. Okay. I talk to the guys from your team, and it's like a lot of bad info. Okay. Actually, the Saints have been there. Okay. So, but Penn State goes through, gives them access to see, not just seeing practice, but we'll talk to them ahead of time. Boom, get a read from them afterward. What are you guys seeing? What are you seeing? And so forth. And the NFL is not there to say, stroke your ego. Same thing with the NBA. It's like, come on, become a New Orleans Saint. Going, okay, they're not recruiting you. Their job is to go back to their GM. Is Mickey Loomis still your GM?
He is.
Okay. So they go back to Mickey Loomis. And they say, look, I went to Penn State, A, B, C, and D. Okay. I think he's a first rounder. I think he is probably a second day guy, second, third round. I think he's a third day guy, and I think he's a free agent. Here are my reasons why. A, B, C, D, right? Okay. Because it's their job to give Mickey Loomis accurate visual information. Okay? Doesn't mean that every scouting report's perfect. It doesn't. Okay? There weren't people going to Albany practices to see Jared Verse. Okay? And he ended up going to Florida State, and everybody couldn't wait to see him at Florida State because on his clock in life, after being a good high school player, not a great high school player at Bloomsburg, went to Albany, FCS. He got there, okay. And then the second year he started to blow up. You're like, hey, he's pretty good. So, Greg Gattuso, Greg told him. So he goes to Florida State. Now he ends up being a first-round pick. Okay. So I'm talking about that's the grading process. What do you think the agent's telling him? What do you think the agent's telling him? Oh, no, you're not a third day guy. No. No, my people are telling me you're second, third.
I've heard you're a mid-second, not a third.
Right. Here's the other part, too.
Mm-hmm.
As you move up the draft board,
mm-hmm.
a lot of times you move up in terms of the caliber of agent.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get my money now while I'm still your agent.
Mm-hmm.
So just slow down. Right? Suddenly out of nowhere, Drew Rosenhaus becomes an option for you because guess what? They're telling me I'm a first-round pick. I'm using him as
as a placeholder for insert high-level agent later.
I mean, it's like there's certain guys that are, Lee Steinberg's been like that. Rosenhaus has been like that. There's certain guys that fall into that. Like the average fan knows who they are. How about that? Okay, as agents, the average fan knows who they are. And there's a reason for that. They're high-profile guys. Well, the low-profile guys, hey, why don't you come out? Why don't you come out? Why don't you come out? And also it's like, well, geez, I don't know. I'm looking at the grade. It kind of shows I should come back next year. Oh, no. There you go. See, there's a little like, you've got to be able to be smart and listen to people. Listen to the coaching staff. Listen to the grade. Okay? Because, again, the New Orleans Saints are not trying to recruit you. Okay? They're trying to tell you in no uncertain terms, when I go back to my general manager, I'm telling him you're a third-day guy. Okay?
Yeah.
Right? But, see, that's the issue that college players are facing right now. Now, one of the keys happens to be that now you do get money on the college level.
Yeah.
And because you do get money on the college level, it buys you some time to maybe make a better decision because you're still going to make some coin out of it. And it doesn't mean that the people doing the evaluations can't be wrong about you. Of course they can. Right? They can be wrong both ways. They can, geez, I really thought he'd translate, and he just hasn't. Or he's like, I got to give him credit. He's better than we thought he was going to be at this level. But for the most part, they're pretty good about where people fall in the draft. The question is whether people listen to them. Does the family listen to them? Does the entourage listen? Okay? Does the agent listen? In other words, there's a lot of things that are happening along the way where, look, they've got a lot of people these days circling around them, right? It's like Jerry, but those are creditors. What?
Nothing.
I noticed you didn't jump in and say I was wrong. Trying to save your job, aren't you?
Speaking of transfers and players real fast, a couple of QBs have landed. You have Caden Salter going from, I believe, Liberty to Colorado. So he's the heir apparent for Shedeur Sanders. And then John Mateer has landed in Oklahoma. He is following his offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle, and quarterback coach both went over there as well.
See, that's the big part right there, because if you're just going over to Oklahoma, they have not had – I mean, Gabriel did well, but he left because he wasn't happy with his draft grade and wasn't happy with how things played out all told at Oklahoma. Jackson Arnold was supposed to be the answer. Last year, they played in the bowl game. I think they played in the Alamo Bowl last year against Arizona. He threw 3 touchdowns and he threw 2 interceptions, or maybe the other way around, threw 2 touchdowns and 3 picks. You're like, okay, it's just one game, but I'd be concerned about that. Well, guess what? It was concerning. He's in the transfer portal.
It's concerning all season. He's at Auburn now. He ends up there officially.
He's going to Auburn. So, but the fact that the coordinator and the quarterback coach are both there, big influence.
It means he is going there knowing that he is going to have an offense that's going to work with him. He knows how the coordinators work.
And remember, Jake Dicker took the job. The head coach at Wake Forest.
And this is the other thing I wanted to bring up, the other piece of this puzzle, which is the time of year of both the portal and also of how coaches leave and how they move with these bowl games coming up. I don't know if I just missed the curve on this one with when players have started to, and coaches started to leave, coaches especially. Portal, we know. We've discussed that a lot because of all the things going on with Bo Prabula. But I think that this Washington State team now has no coach, offensive. I don't think they have a defensive coordinator. They're missing their quarterback's coach, and someone else plus their quarterback are now all gone.
You kind of paint a picture.
But before they play in their bowl game,
I know.
Everyone's gone.
Yeah.
And one of the Syracuse University reporters, or the people who work at Syracuse, Chris Carlson, reported saying, yes, I talked to the Holiday Bowl. They are not, Washington State still wants to play in this game. Right. They're coming forward as if everyone wants to play in it, which is cool and good. But now they're down like half of these players. I think their running back also left. Like, all of your starters are just gone. This is worse than, in my head, than opting out of a game. Everyone is out of the building completely. Sure. Yeah. So if you are sitting there, who is going to call this game? Like, who on this staff?
Well, they'll get somebody who's been an analyst or something like that. I mean, look, coaching staffs are not 11 people, head coach and 10 assistants. That's not how coaching staffs are today.
Yeah.
So you still have a lot more people like that there. It's a question of what kind of options do you have to play the game. Marshall determined they couldn't play the game, so they're not going to play the game. They got replaced by Louisiana. And before we remember, okay, Louisiana is not the number one team available on APR. You want to know where they are? 17th. Okay. But what's the key? Why are they going? They're on the quarter system, not on semesters. Their players are on campus and available.
Yeah.
Oh. Right? I mean, that's why they're going. But now back to your point about Washington State. Right? It's a game nobody's going to watch anyway. Syracuse, no draw.
Don't disrespect Kyle McCord like that.
Actually, I will watch the game because I actually do think it's a decent matchup. But without Mateer there, it becomes that's big.
Yeah.
But when you get into a situation like this, okay, how do you stop it? Okay, this is where collective bargaining comes in, and you've got to do collective bargaining between, players and management. I think you have to put in something and put a date in. Pick a date. Okay? So in this case, it would be January 4th. Let's pick that because that's the last day of the bowls. Okay? If you leave your job as the head coach before that date and take another job, it's a $10 million fine.
Yeah.
I'm just I'm coming up with solutions here.
Yeah.
No, you can go, but you got to coach the team until you leave.
That's why.
Right? In other words, and believe me, people are going to be like, I'm not paying $10 million.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, who wants to do that?
Yeah.
But I mean, that would, to me, like, I've accepted the job, the whole deal. It doesn't mean I can't do some stuff on the side. I mean, Bill O'Brien was still getting ready for the Super Bowl while still coaching Penn State. Yeah. He didn't have a game to get ready for at the time. Just the Super Bowl game with the Giants. I remember. No, I'm not kidding. I went into his office one day, and because he wanted to talk about something. I went in and we're just chit chatting, and he's got all this Giants tape up on the up on the screen because he was getting ready for the game.
Heck, this year Ben Johnson's going to be sitting there getting calls from every team to be a head coach, and he's going to be coaching the Lions on the offensive side of the ball, going through the playoffs. He's going to sit there and do both things. The NFL does it in a way that does not mean it is a bad thing for you to want to get a job elsewhere. Right. What it means is people want you, and we want to make sure that you are wanted, but also are doing your job as well. In this case, it's like the bowl game doesn't matter at all for anybody.
You put the parameters on, okay, for example, I think there are more players. Let's take Kyle McCord, your guy. Okay? I think because of NIL deals, you're actually seeing more players actually play in the game for their teams where there's stability. Fran Brown's not going anywhere right now, right? So NIL is actually, I think, incorporating more deals where people are playing in bowl games, because I'm seeing actually more and more players not opting out. They're opting out when they're in the Marshall situation. They're opting out when in the Washington State situation. But some hope, for example, Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders are both playing in the Alamo Bowl.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they're doing that because I'm sure they're getting NIL assurances to play in the game.
By the way, right now, Washington State plays Syracuse. They don't have their head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, QB coach, running back coach, QB, running back, or 21 other players.
But again, coaching staffs are not a head coach and 10 assistants any longer.
I know.
Okay? They're much more extensive than that.
But this is just like it adds to the whole craziness of it that like these players are put under this microscope. Like, how dare you leave? And I know a lot of players in other schools. We haven't seen it with Bo Priola because everyone's been positive because like he's been put in an impossible position. But there are so many players who are opting out of bowl games via the portal and are leaving, and these coaches do it and don't get talked about at all. It is like but the coach is okay to leave because he's got to go get a different job.
But again, that's where I'm talking about the $10 million fine. I'm trying to say, I'm not saying you can't go to your new job, okay? But you got to finish your first job first. Okay?
Yeah.
You got to finish your first job first. Same thing with the bowl game. Play in the bowl game. You want okay? Blair Thomas was telling a story yesterday about playing in the bowl game and the 2 All-Star games. He played in the Hula Bowl, which no longer exists. Or no, Hula Bowl, maybe it was the Senior Bowl. I think he played in the Senior Bowl, and then he played in the Japan Bowl. Okay? And he said, in the end, I ended up being the second overall pick in the draft because he had a phenomenal Holiday Bowl. He rushed for 189 yards. He was the co-MVP with Ty Detmer. Penn State won the game 50-41. Okay? And but by playing in the bowl game, which at that point nobody's opting out at that point, but by playing the bowl game, we went, boy, he's good. Right? Then he played in the All-Stars, the 2 All-Star games. Everybody's like, yeah, he's really good. He ended up being the second overall pick in the draft. Right? Okay? I don't think players realize that by playing, you can show everybody's like, everybody wants to bubble wrap. I don't want to get hurt. By playing, you can show everybody, you know what? I'm not a third-round pick. I'm a second-round pick. You want to know what? I'm not a second-day pick. You need to consider me as a first-day pick.
Yeah. Instead of there being 17 games on at the same time, there are 2. Like, people are going to pick to watch your games because there is less to watch, so they're going to watch those games. They're going to watch the Holiday Bowl, the ReliaQuest Bowl. They're going to put these games on because it's what's happening. There isn't 30 schools playing at the same time. There's 2.
Right.
So, yeah, people are going to see you on national TV in a way that you have probably not been seen before unless you were in the SEC. Like that in Big Ten. That is about it.
But the more you show good work, the more you showcase where you should actually be. And the reason you're either one of 2 things. You're afraid of getting hurt, legitimate.
Yeah.
Okay? But are you afraid of your performance? Like, well, I mean, I look at the Rose Bowl, for example. Penn State had, I think Joey Porter Jr. is the only opt-out Penn State had. Jair Brown made himself a third-round pick because of how he played the game. Like, went out, had a big interception on the sideline. It was his 10th career pick. Right? It was like, man, he can really play. The 49ers noticed that. He ended up moving up the board because of how he played in the game. Right? He could have opted out. He didn't opt out. Right? In fact, he enhanced his draft position by playing in the game because he showed, hey, this guy's really good. Right? And guess what was the only game on at 5 o'clock in the afternoon on January 2nd?
What would that be?
Yeah. So, and it was a lead-in to the, obviously, the ill-fated Buffalo-Cincinnati game with DeMar Hamlin. It was actually the lead-in to that game.
Yeah.
But people were watching. And NFL people were watching. And to me, if you have confidence in who you are, and you don't sit there and start worrying over and over again about, what are you going to worry? Everybody, look, every single player that gets on the bus, in the back of their head somewhere, like, oh, please don't get hurt. Just because they don't want to get hurt. Okay? Anthony Donko's already had his surgery, for example, but he's got to rehab his way back. I talked with Cam Wallace yesterday. Cam Wallace broke both his legs. Right? This guy, everything in life for him is made on speed. Right? And I said, how's the rehab going? And he says, it's been good. He says, I'm finally getting an opportunity. Let's start with this. He can walk.
Yeah. Which is the biggest thing that matters here.
He can walk. Okay. Now that he can walk, he can properly rehab. So that's hard. Rehab's difficult. Rehab's lonely. I know you're rehabbing with somebody else, but you're not around the team. And that's difficult. And for him, what's been great is that his teammates have been fabulous. The way they've been have rallied around him when he was in the facility and had to and right after the injury, players went down to see him, which was great. But still, it's difficult. It's difficult. Zariah Fisher now is going through his second rehab. He's had to fight his guts out. He had to fight his guts out to get the first one. Right?
Yeah.
Okay? Keon Wiley's back practicing, but he's not clear to play yet. But he's had to fight his guts out to get to this point. Because I watch this stuff. I see it. I see how hard they're working. So I do understand the risk, but also in the back of your head, the concern about getting hurt. I got that. Right? But when you're playing the game, you're not thinking about that. So, there's a lot to think about with that. And again, to me, it's a big part of this is, do you have enough confidence in your ability, right, to be somebody that says, you know what, I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to show everybody how great I am.
Yeah.
And some guys have that confidence. Some people don't.
Yeah.
Women's volleyball is tonight. It is the second matchup. It's about 8:45 this evening. Nebraska will take on Penn State. And the opening matchup will be Pitt against Louisville. Louisville being the host school. It's at the KFC Yum Center tonight.
The 4 number 1 seeds in the tournament have all made it here.
Yep. So
this is the best of the best.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think. Penn State has played all of them. Penn State has played all of them. And that's the...
it's going to be interesting.
No, I think it's going to be great volleyball tonight. The fact they beat Creighton in 5, I thought was tremendous. The reason I thought that was tremendous is it just shows a lot of guts that you're able to, at 15-7. I realize they've home courted their way in.
But you still got to win. You still got to win is what matters. Yeah, they had home court. They still have to play in that well enough to win the game. It's like with Penn State this weekend. They have home field advantage. They still got to actually go out and win the game.
Well, that's the whole thing. You got to go win.
Yeah.
You have to go win. That's the bottom. And winning's hard. I talk about this all the time, but winning's hard. Right? You think you have some built-in advantages, which you need to take care of, take advantage of. But you need to execute. You need to be the one that goes out and hits the right button at the right time. You need to be the one that makes the fewest mistakes. It's just that's what makes it so gratifying when you win. There is a segment, right? It's not a big segment, okay? But there's a segment of the population that thinks winning is easy. And this is not ESPN's fault, okay? Well, can I preface that?
Yeah.
But when you have a show, SportsCenter, or college football final, whatever it may be, where it's all highlights and the best plays, boy, it sure does look easy, doesn't it? And it gives one the perception that it's easy. Okay, NFL Red Zone, where they're cutting here, cutting there, cutting here, makes it look easy. Right? I'm talking about perception, and it's so difficult. And there's a perception of the population that believes it's easy, and there's a perception of the population. Oh, I'll give you one. Okay, and this came from the coach. Green Bay.
Oh, boy.
Now coached by Doug Gottlieb.
Oh, you mean radio host Doug Gottlieb.
Right. And former point guard at Oklahoma State. Said that they were talking about the non-conference schedule, and he was using generalities, and he said, look, I want to play the best teams. I don't want to just be playing nobody you.
Yes, he said this specifically about D2 Michigan Tech, who is coming in the next day. Yep. And what happened the next day, Steve?
Michigan Tech won. Now, the Green Bay was up in the game by 13 in the second half and lost the game. Again, like, how can that possibly happen? I can tell you how it possibly happened. Okay, I can tell you easily how it possibly. Guess what? On that particular night, they hit shots, they made plays, and Green Bay did not. And that's what you worry about. That's what makes, like, oh, it's a given. So, so that segment of the population that thinks winning is easy goes, oh, it's all his fault. He screwed up. He blew it the whole thing. Well, it's not easy. It's not. Right? I remember 2011, Penn State played a game, 2011. It was 2010, 2011, so it's December 2010. Penn State this season made the NCAA tournament, went all the way to the Big Ten championship game, made the NCAA tournament, went out to Tucson. They lost a game right after finals by 10 to Maine. Dick and I are like, Maine? Really? Maine. Now, in the end, it didn't hurt them because they did enough in the conference to lock up their spot, especially when they made the run in the Big Ten tournament. But winning's hard, right? People, other people can make plays, other people can make shots, other people can make catches. I mean, it's just that's what's so difficult about it. And I think there are some people, again, it's a segment, and not at large. There's a segment that thinks, just got to show up. We're good.
I do want to quickly go back to this Doug Gottlieb thing because it was very comical. This happened for Doug Gottlieb a day after he went at Adam Schefter, also on social media, because Adam Schefter brought up the Michael Vick story of Michael Vick being looked at by Sacramento State as their head coach. They were looking at him, were thinking about it, and Schefter reported that Sacramento State had raised up to $50 million in their NIL funding for players.
Right.
And they posted about it saying Sacramento State's NIL group said we had $50 million. And then what does Doug Gottlieb do? Doug Gottlieb responded to it by being like, geez, Shefty, like actually source your opinion, source your facts first. Right. Schefter then responded saying their NIL fund said we raised $50 million. Like they stated it out loud. So pretty confident in that one. And he then responded by being like, and you're on a 7-game losing streak, now an 8-game after the Michigan Tech game.
Right.
And he was like, go back to coaching and I'll worry about what I do as my job. And Doug Gottlieb is doing his radio show, I believe, still. He's still a radio host and also coaching this team.
He is.
And he apparently missed his show today or yesterday, I believe. So it's something happening out there. And speaking of craziness, I know, a lot of crazy things happening. I feel like you'll enjoy this one, Steve. Do you play video games a lot?
I never have once in my life.
Do you know the Madden games?
I know of them.
You know of them.
I know of them.
You know who else knows of them? Woody Johnson. Do you know who Woody Johnson is?
He's the owner of the Jets, and I do know what he did with Jerry Jeudy.
Yes.
This is where you have a big problem in life. He nixed a trade for Jerry Jeudy because of his Madden rating. What is wrong with you? Okay? We're doing too much with mumbo-jumbo stuff. PFF grades are guesses. Now, there's some educated guessing. All right? I'm not going to say they're not. But they don't know what the play is, what it was supposed to be, what your assignment was. They don't know any of that stuff. Okay? Madden ratings. Is Madden rating? This is how wacky we're becoming with like using other sources besides somebody who has eyes and a feel for what they're doing.
I don't believe it's just he or we. I think it's just he. I think just Woody Johnson, because this is a whole report that came out from The Athletic today from Diana Rossini, Zach Blatt, and Mike Silver, all about the impulsive decision-making of Woody Johnson and his involvement at the root of the Jets' dysfunction.
But there are fans that make their comments based on Madden.
It's crazy.
Right? Yeah. I'm not joking.
No, I know. Right? I know you're not joking, but it's psychotic.
There are people that make their comments based on the fantasy number. It's irrelevant. I just want to know, like, what can the guy do to help me win? Right? You've got to be able to see, this is where it's so important in today's world, and it's very difficult to do. But for some reason, I'm not connected to this stuff, so it's not that hard. The outside noise. You got to get rid of it. Okay? You've got professionals in there. Look, if the professionals make a mistake, the professionals make a mistake. I got it. Okay? But if you're sitting there and you're looking at a Madden rating, everything's based on what we're going to do based on what your analytics department says, things like that. Look, these people are not football people. Okay? They're not basketball people. They're not baseball people. Okay? They're computer people. Doesn't mean they don't like the game. Doesn't mean they don't like the sport. But you got to be able to look out there and go, okay, this player, God, he's got great speed. Man, you just get him out there, the whole thing. Then you realize when you're watching him out there, what's one of his biggest issues as a player? He doesn't know the plays. Have I ever seen that? Yes. We were like, God, he's got all the talent in the world, but he doesn't have a handle on the playbook. Like, well, why is he not playing? Oh, the coaches know. No, he doesn't have a handle on the playbook. I've seen that before several times, where you're looking at an ultra talented guy, and you're like, okay, what's X's issue over there? It's a playbook issue, right? And these are things where I refer to it as management by walking around. Okay? If you're around it, you can see it and you can ask the proper questions. When you've got an owner sitting there going, his Madden rating is whatever, look, I got guys walking around the facility that see practice every day, they're looking at tape every day, and they're telling me this guy can help us. I'm like going, hey, you just make the move. I've got the money, you make the move. That's what's ridiculous about this. We're getting away from, and it doesn't mean every decision is perfect. Okay? I'm sure the Packers, when they drafted Tony Mandarich, second overall, thought they had an offensive lineman for the next 10, 12 years. Right? Well, they didn't understand all the side issues that went with them. Okay, I got it. Right? But I'll never forget, it was who was it that went from Boston College to the Eagles? Mike Mamula. He combined out. They're like, oh my God, look at him. Like, watch a tape. I'm like, it's all right. And he gets to the Eagles like, he's all right, but he's not, you know what I mean?
Trey Lance, Zach Wilson. Like, we barely saw any of them in college, and they were like, second, third overall quarterbacks.
And that's what I've talked about.
How'd that
go? Right? Why is Brock Purdy's struggling this season, but so is the entire 49er offense. But he's got 4 years of a body of work. Like, why has he had some success in the NFL? Because, he threw this interception, that interception, whatever. Guess what? You know what I noticed? How he bounced back from them. When you have a limited body of work, which a lot of people are like, don't want to show too much.
Yeah. I'd rather have more than less.
Right? But for them, less is more. Right? Don't want to play in the bowl game. Less is more.
I wonder who the next nobody you to beat Green Bay is going to be. Spoiler. You know who it is, Steve? You know who they're playing next?
Syracuse, aren't they?
They're playing Drake next.
One of the final. Drake is really good.
One of the final remaining undefeated teams in Division One.
Thank you for listening to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, a 7 Mountain Media production. Come back at 11 every weekday for analysis of the latest happening in the sports landscape. From college football to European soccer, Steve and Kyle cover it all on